And we're live. It's the Mindstate Marketing Hour with your favorite mad scientist. He's a scientist, but he doesn't carry a clipboard. He doesn't wear a white coat. He doesn't ride a motorcycle, but he does have a leather jacket. It's Will Leach, and
That's
it's the
right.
Mindstate Marketing Hour. That's right. How to use science to connect with your clients. And now I'm going to roll out this nice intro, and we're excited about today's show. See that leather jacket?
There he is.
Look at him. He's a good looking scientist. Hey, Chad Cristo, he's on today. How to overcome some sales anxiety. My goodness. Will, where'd you stumble into Chad?
I know. Well, Chad actually was introduced to me by a mutual friend. And my friend said, we just got to call Chad. And I want I want you to introduce yourself to him. And just Chad and I think, instantly connected. He's high energy, man. He's like me. He's high energy, thinks about possibilities, which I loved. And I was fortunate enough, he asked me to come and do a speech to some of his top advisors. And I'd never given a speech, Steve, to like top advisors, especially in the financial industry, financial services industry. And it was fascinating, man, especially the conversations I had afterwards. I just love that industry now. It's so fascinating. And I want to talk about this during our show. Helping people manage their money. There's so much emotion around money and finances. And so I was fascinated with them. And so I asked him if he'd be on the show. He graciously accepted. And Chad Cristo, welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Steve. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
We're excited to have you. Will sucks at sales. Okay.
I do.
And he admits to it, but actually he's good at it because he thinks he sucks at it, truthfully. And anyway, he does a great job. He's got these great accounts. But even in my job, I have to sell all the time, and I've been doing it for years. But I feel insecure often. I feel like you get caught up in that conversation with them, and you're talking along, and it's like, oh my gosh, should I be following a formal sales process or should I just be me? There's this confusion around it. And then there's that cliche, that what do they say? A car salesman, right? Everyone doesn't want to be that guy. And so they don't attempt to try to be an excellent salesperson. And being an excellent salesperson doesn't mean I'm out to get you. It means I'm out to help you. And so that's what I really love to talk about today, Chad.
I agree. Wait, before we get started, Chad, let me do a quick introduction. I know it's a bit awkward, but I think the team should hear about you. And then I want you to talk about your journey afterwards, because who are you? What do you do now? But what was your journey? So for you guys on the show, and we are live, so if you want to ask questions, you can go ahead and type them into LinkedIn, or if you're on the Facebook page or on YouTube, just type them in there. But real quickly, Chad Cristo is a financial services expert with decades of experience, though he looks so young. I can't believe he has decades, Steve. He's not looking like us. 29 years, guys, at Putnam Investments in sales and leadership roles. He was recognized as a top gun over at Putnam for 10 consecutive years before he went into leadership. And then there was this coup. Steve, where another company came called Independent Financial Group and took him away. So there's something major about that. And he's now the Senior Vice President of National Sales and Marketing. He's got his Bachelor of Science from Boston University in International Management and Finance, and is a certified investment management analyst, and obtained Series 24, Series 7, Series 65, Series 6, and Series 63 licenses. So I know that's awkward for me to tell all that stuff, Chad, but it's important for the audience to know. So again, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sounds serious.
I know there's a lot of series in there, aren't there? So Chad, think about you're growing up. There's all sorts of things you could have been. We all wanted to be marine biologists at one point in life. I know I did, Steve. He wanted to as well. So how did you get to where you are today? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
I was a very ambitious young college student, like you had mentioned in my bio, at Boston University. And I had the biggest fear that, and I'm going to date myself here, but 1992, when I graduate, that I'm not going to have a job. And my mom and dad said to me, hey, Chad, guess what? You go off to college, there's no coming back home, right? So it's sink or swim, man. You're out, or you're off the payroll. So I said, okay. So, I put a lot of pressure on myself to make sure that when I graduated in 4 years, not 5, in 4 years, that I had a job. And I was coming into an environment where the job market and the economy was quite terrible at the time. 1992 was not a great year to be graduating, seeking a job. So what I did in my off days in college where I didn't have classes, I took on internships. So I remember working for a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch, one of the years, right? I think that was my junior year. So I think it was Wednesday afternoons and all day Friday, I'd go and I'd cold call. And that helped me get experience in, trying to help advisors be introduced to new clients. The following year, I did it again. It was with a firm at the time called DLJ, Donaldson, Lufkin and Jemrett, which was a really awesome boutique firm. And I worked in the Boston office doing the same thing, cold calling for their high net worth advisors. And then went on to be invited to do an internship over the summer in London. So what happened was by the time I graduated in May of after my senior year, I had a resume, right? I had something that I could literally say, okay, I've got some work experience. You've got a young man here that's highly motivated, and you need to give me a shot. So that was how I was able to kind of overcome that challenge in that environment and try to differentiate myself. And we could go on and on about different characteristics of sales and selling, but one of the biggest is differentiation. You really have to differentiate yourself.
Let me ask you, what's interesting about your career is that it seems like you've always stayed in financial investments, right? You could have sold technology, you could have done all sorts of things.
Sure.
What is it about this industry that just fascinates you enough that you stayed in the industry for 30 plus years now?
It's a great question. And sometimes I scratch my head wondering, geez, what if I did go off into tech sales versus financial services sales, right? What would have been the outcome? Look, I grew up with a great mentor. My mom and my dad were terrific mentors. My mom was a business owner, an entrepreneur, and my father was a financial advisor. So I had exposure to the investment markets at a very young age. My sister and I at Christmas under the tree, we'd get some gifts here and there, but every year under the tree, there would be something wrapped that resembled a publicly traded company. And then there'd be an envelope with shares of that publicly traded company, but they were always something that we could relate to. So I remember one year I had a giant bin of Tootsie Rolls under the Christmas tree. I'm huge, must have been 500 Tootsie Rolls in this thing. Well, I'm like, wow, this is cool. I got a bunch of Tootsie Rolls. But then the next thing that my parents had me open was the envelope, which was 100 shares of Tootsie Roll stock, and Tootsie Roll had gone public at that time. So it taught my sister and I, how to invest and you actually have ownership in these companies. So I took a real liking to that and a real passion to it. And that's I kind of led with where my passion was.
And still have that passion today. Yeah.
Still have it today. Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for you, Chad, because you remember that show Fear Factor with Joe Rogan, and I always envisioned a great episode would be, do you want a cold call or do you want to eat these raw bugs? Okay. Yeah. And I believe most people would just choose to eat the bugs over doing cold calling. And not only did you get in there and do cold calling from financial services, you did it in Boston. Okay. If there was the hardest place in the world that I would think you doing cold calling, it would be in that area. It must have really built your muscles.
Yes, for sure. Cold calling, I've never met anyone that says I love cold calling. It's really hard. If it's okay, I'll tell a very quick story, but I do remember the year that I worked at DLJ, we used to use these Dun & Bradstreet cards that would give, it was basically lead cards. So I called this one, and it was located, the individual was located in Maine. And I called, and a woman picked up the phone, and she said, hello? Hi, Mrs. Jones, my name is Chad Cristo. I'm representing Donaldson, Lufkin and Jemrett here in downtown Boston. And I would like to speak to Bill Jones, please. Okay, he's on the tractor. Can you give me a minute? So literally, she went out to the field. He was a potato farmer, and owned this very significant farm of potatoes, and she went out and got him off the tractor, pulled him inside, and he got on the phone with me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, now what do I say? But you know what? You just got to keep smiling and dialing and have a good attitude, a good tone in your voice, and eventually the numbers play to your favor. So and you can't be afraid.
Oh my gosh. Well, so for those of you out in the listening now, there's a book out there it's from Dan Pink actually, and it's called To Sell Is Human. Mm-hmm. And so Chad, Dan Pink is a behavioral scientist. Oh, actually he's a reporter, but he does a lot of behavioral science books. And one of the things he talks about in this book is that we're all selling. You may not think of yourself as a salesperson, but every single person is selling. You're selling yourself to your manager. You're selling yourself to a spouse. You're selling yourself to your kids. You're selling yourself and your services to somebody else. And so he makes this big push to say, becoming a better salesperson, being able to sell is a critical life skill. It's not like a job. It is a life skill. And because of that, he also talks about how uncomfortable people are, because it takes a lot of, spunk, I guess, maybe, to look at yourself and say, a lot of times, I feel worthy enough for whatever I'm offering, my product, or even my own abilities that can better you. And so in doing that, do you have, in thinking about this, there's a lot of people out there that just don't feel comfortable in selling. They just don't, right? Do you have like an overall philosophy or maybe an approach that you've used, or you could help people who kind of feel this tension and this fear to overcome that fear, so they could actually one day pick up a phone call, maybe, or pick up a phone one day and try to literally cold call? Like, what's your philosophy?
Yeah, sales is so much about the relationship. It really is. People do business with people that they like. They do business with people that they trust, and they do business with people that add value, right? So if you can ingratiate yourself to be likable to that person, if you can prove to them that you're trustworthy, and show them and prove that you can add value, you've overcome the majority of the hurdles of sales, in my humble opinion. It's so much about the relationship. And I am not the kind of individual that comes in hard with a product to sell. In fact, when someone does that to me, it's the biggest turnoff. I can't stand it. So many people lead with the product, and instead of just getting to know me, instead of just getting to understand what my needs are, getting to understand kind of what makes me tick, right? What are my pain points? Maybe I have some pain points that I need a solution for. And the only way that you can truly do that is by developing an authentic relationship, a real relationship where you genuinely care. There's a quote by one of the financial services industry veterans. His name's Nick Murray. And I've never forgot this when he said this. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so many people just want to spew all the things that they know and prove how smart they are and be the smartest person in the room. People don't care. They just want to know that you care about them. And that's one of the biggest things in sales, is just caring about the other person, being empathetic and understanding what their needs are.
I think one of the key things in your story, when you told the story about Christmas and how there's this thing in your childhood that establishes how you look at things, from investing, from those stock, the stocks that your parents gave you. But imagine your conviction when you get on the phone to cold call. That's where it's stemming from, and that's where your authenticity is coming from. And I think that really connects the dots for me about your enthusiasm and why you're authentic and why people feel you care, because it comes from that story.
Thank you. I'm sure you've heard of David Goggins.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, just listening to David Goggins is just amazing. I mean, what a champion. But he has a quote that really stuck with me, and there's nothing more contagious than a good attitude. The only thing that's more contagious than a good attitude is a bad attitude. And a good attitude is incredibly contagious, right? Whether you're on the phone, smiling on the phone, or in person, having good positive attitude is very contagious. People people gravitate towards that.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, we have a LinkedIn user, whoever, thank you for quoting us, like lead with questions. And it brings up an idea that, so I used to be pretty nervous about selling things, right? My own company, in fact. And somebody gave me this idea, and it's pretty common out there now. I don't know if you use it, Chad, but it's this idea of take on the persona of a doctor. So a doctor, if you come to me, a doctor doesn't go, okay, here's 15, here's what I do. And then, I want to do some medical tests. What do they first do? They ask questions like, well, let's talk about you. Like, what's going on? And what most people think of a doctor as, my job as your doctor is to identify where your pains are, to empathize with you. And then sometimes I'm going to have a solution, but actually sometimes I'm not. Like, you need a cancer doctor, but I'm a, ear, nose, and I don't know what this are. I'm an ophthalmologist, whatever it is. Sorry, Steve. I looked at Steve, started laughing. So I remember thinking to myself, if I looked at myself as not trying to sell anything, but you called me because, or we connected because there's probably a need, and I'm a doctor. I'm here to diagnose. I'm here to listen to you, diagnose your problem, and then provide a solution if I have one. If I don't, I owe it to you to get you in touch with the right person. So that, to me, helped me think of myself as not being this used car salesman trying to pitch my business, but truly trying to help the person. Is there anything like that that you try to do? I mean, for those people out there that are young, they don't know how to do. Is there anything like that you can help them try to take on that role? Because what you did say is building trusting relationships is important, but how do you do that? How do you get somebody to do that?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. You have to asking questions, and the individual that was on LinkedIn that posted that is absolutely correct. You have to ask a lot of questions up front, right? When you walk into that doctor's office, they're not immediately prescribing you a medication or a solution, right? They're asking all kinds of questions. To your point, what are the pain points? And 80% of selling is listening, right? So it's leading with good, authentic questions. It has to be authentic, and you have to show that you genuinely care. But as you ask those questions, the person tends to open up, and all of a sudden you learn an awful lot about that individual and really what their needs are. I recently went to one of the car dealerships near where I live, and my daughter, who's getting her license, I got to figure out some type of car solution for her. The ideal solution would be no car, but
that's right.
Right. So I'm in this conundrum here. So I go to the dealership, and having been in sales for, like you said, multiple decades, I'm sensitive to how I get treated. And the sales consultant never asked me any questions. Didn't just said, I happen to be peeking in the window of one. He's like, oh, would you like to go for a test drive? This is a great car. It's got this bell and whistle and this and that. Never once did he just step back and say, hey, welcome. What are you here for? What do you need? What are you going to use the car for? Is it a daily driver? Is it something that you're just going to use part-time? Is it for you? Is it for a family? What are the needs? Never asked him that. And it's actually mind-boggling to me. How can you prescribe anything if you don't ask the questions to understand their needs, right?
Yep. What the situation that you're describing, Chad, is like there's this fear of being manipulated when we approach a sales conversation, right? And then there's this insecurity of, all right, I'm supposed to sell. I'm supposed to connect this solution with people. And so there's this a fear of being manipulative, right? And even with Mindstate Marketing, Will's, a lot of people wonder, well, is this being manipulated? Am I setting up a situation that's going to take advantage of someone using techniques and things? How do you answer a question like that? It's like, how do you get away from I got to make my quota to I want to help this person?
Yeah, well, that's got to come from within, right? Because you'll hit your quota if you do the right thing, right? If you do the right thing, you listen, you provide a solution to somebody's needs, the success, the money, the hitting the quota, the whatever you need to, that all follows. If you can just put that aside, it's really such a great question that you're asking, because so many people get caught up in just attaining that carrot immediately. And it's really the wrong approach. I mean, I was in Scottsdale, Arizona 2 weeks ago, and I had the opportunity to meet with one of IFG's largest advisors, and it hit me immediately why he's one of IFG's largest and most successful advisors, because he does such a great job at solving people's challenges and problems and needs. And we spent he asked me so many questions, and he was so comprehensive in his approach. And not once did he ever talk about a product. He wasn't pushing anything. He just asked a lot of great questions. And that gives him a lot of power and ammunition, because then he knows he can then come in and provide a solution that I'm going to be very receptive to.
I love that. From LinkedIn, as a woman, the sales conversation often feels like I'm being placated. Yeah, it's still in the world today. Even now, I'm sure it's still happening. I'm sure it's still happening today. So let me ask you, Chad. So, I want to talk a little bit about, like, not just general selling, but you and your staff, and I guess your other advisors, like, you're selling something incredibly emotional. It's people's future. It's their aspirations for their family. I mean, that's bigger than a Dorito, though I love my Doritos, and I've done a lot of work for Doritos in the past. But I mean, you were really trying to sell your ability to help people reach their aspirational goals generationally, probably in some cases, right? And so there's got to be a lot of emotion there. So is there anything that you've learned in such a high emotional category? Is there anything you've learned about human beings and people in general that you could share with the audience about how to sell something like that meaningful to people?
Yeah, well, that meaningful, that's also intangible.
Yeah,
right.
It's so true. You can't even see it. You can't see it for 30 years.
You can't touch it. You can't feel it. And that makes that type of sale even that much more challenging. But that's where you have to bring it to life. You have to bring it to life. You have to, again, back to understanding their needs and their goals and their aspirations. You have to boil it down to how this plan, because in essence, that's what we're selling, is a plan. And this plan is going to help you achieve this particular goal, dream, aspiration that you've articulated to me. And I don't know if I'm answering your question entirely, but what I find really important in that is that you have to bring it to life. You have to make it real and tangible in a way so they can relate to it. And what I have found, the advisors that are most successful at doing this really bring it to life. They make it real. And a lot of people have aspirations to maybe spend every penny up until the day they die, and that's what one aspiration. And then there's many people that say, nope, I want to leave my wealth to charity, or I want to leave it to the next generation, or to multiple generations, whatever it is. And you've got to come up with a solution and a plan that helps them visualize that, how that's going to play out. And
there's a really famous behavioral science principle called hyperbolic discounting for you guys out there. But the idea is that we value things today that we can see, touch, feel much more than we value things in the future. And I think I even talked to some of your advisors out there saying that the hardest thing to do is showing somebody their future, because we always imagine our futures better. We all think we're going to be wise and great looking, wealthy, lots of spare time. We all believe that. It's actually a bias that we have. And I remember I went to a conference out in Stanford one time, and for health. So in the healthcare industry, what they found is really useful, trying to get somebody to take good care of themselves today, eating healthy, because, hey, when you're 70 years old, you're gonna be more active. People go, yeah, I'll be healthy. That's fine. I'll start doing that later. What they did, and this is an interesting thing, they created, this is before facial filters really were a thing, but what you could do back then, it's a new technology where you could take a photograph of yourself and it would make you older. It would bring wrinkles and make you kind of wrinkly. And that apparently, by seeing yourself, envisioning yourself in your 70s, made that reaction immediate today. So I remember taking this picture, I was in my mid 30s, and they showed me what I would look like in my 70s. I'd look the sunspots, Steve. They made me look a lot worse than I believe I'm going to look, by the way. They made me look pretty good. But I remember that's a visceral thing. That's a way of taking health and bringing it today. You can see it today. And is there anything similar in your experience that you can bring their future today? Is there anything that you do by envisioning your ideal car, or this wealth is going to last 4 generations? Imagine your grandchildren. Is that how you do it?
Yeah, that is how you do it. You can't just talk about dollars and cents and numbers, right? Because that doesn't necessarily mean anything. You have to talk about experiences. So this plan will, it will provide you with this, whatever, financial outcome or this particular cash flow model. But what does that mean? What's that gonna do for you? It's going to allow you, one of your aspirations was to take 4 vacations a year. So it's going to allow you to be in Europe, once a quarter or twice a quarter. It's going to allow you to visit your grandchildren at the beach, once a year. And it's going to allow you to take that ski trip that you love to take every year in Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Yeah, the specificity is so important, right? I love how you were specific, right? Because you can imagine the grandchildren. You can imagine Europe. I love that. You got
to bring it to life. You really do. It can't be about the dollars.
I think the thing that really resonates, if you can help see that the person that you're helping, they're the hero in their story. This comes from my story brand relationship, really helped me. But when you envision our hero in the story and what their aspirational desire is, and so by asking the questions that you're talking about, Chad, you figure out this is their desire to help a charity or whatever, and then you help them draw that specific picture in their mind in the future, is like really connecting the dots and helping you communicate. I understand you. I'm listening to you. And then here's the plan to help you go to this place that you see in your mind.
Right. I saw someone type in, I think it might have been on LinkedIn, something about no one likes to be told or sold. Right. And that's a really important point. You have to empower the person. You have to give them control and empowerment in this decision. And, you mentioned me leaving a 29-year career at Putnam and joining Independent Financial Group, right? That's a big decision after being at one place for 29 years. And when you come in, I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like the new guy, right? And I have to instill change in some cases. And there is a mission that I need to try to accomplish. But to successfully accomplish that mission, there's 2 ways of going about it. You can come in with a real hard stick and you can be authoritative and just tell them the way it's going to be. And then the question you might ask yourself is, well, do you think people are really going to be psyched to adopt that? No, because they're being told what to do. Right. But instead, if you come in, you ask a lot of questions and you listen, and then you start asking them, well, if you had to make a shift or an adjustment in culture or in mindset, how would you go about doing it? How would you do it? And ask their thoughts and their opinion, and then say, I love that. Can we do that together? Right? So you're empowering them. You're getting them on the same side of the table. And that's the same thing as us dealing with a client for their retirements. It's no different. They have to be a part of it, right? We got to be together, not divided by something. So.
Like all relationships, right? It's the same thing. It's like being a parent, being a good spouse, all those relationships, your friends. It's about empowering the other person so we're in this thing together. I love this.
Chad, tell us about a time where that lesson really hit home on you. Maybe you were addressing it in that told or with the stick, and then it really sunk in.
Yeah. So, when I was doing it the wrong way, you mean?
Yeah.
Trust me, I've done that too many times. That's how you learn, right? Right. It was when I was asked to relocate from my long-term territory in New York on the East Coast to move to the West Coast to take on a managerial role, a leadership role where I was now managing my peers, right? So I was going from a period of my career where, I'm equal with my peers, we're at the same level, we're all in production together, and now all of a sudden I'm like their boss, right? That's a tough thing to adapt to, right? So I had one scenario where this one particular sales representative he was hitting my buttons. He wasn't being necessarily very respectful, and he was coming in really aggressive and hard and asking for this and asking for that. And I let my emotions get the best of me. And my reaction was much more emotional than it was thoughtful. And I learned from that. I'm like, okay, you need to just, you have to be more clinical. You have to take a deep breath, understand where this other person is coming from, and you can't react with emotion. You've got to react with good logic and good thought. And that was a moment where I realized that you need to get on the same side of the table as the other person and put your arm around them and say, okay, let's talk this through here in a calm, cool way, right? So anyway, that was one that stands out in my mind. I wish I could take back.
Yeah, no, we've all been there. I have a friend who works at a company where she used to be a junior analyst. Now she separated from from PepsiCo, right? So all these people she used to work with, over time they become consultants, right? You work at a big company, you become a consultant. Now she's very high level at a big company, and she's hired them as consultants, but they still treat her as a junior analyst, right? And she's like, she has to remind them, like, hey, like this, actually I have a department of 40 people now, so I kind of am in charge, but she's also very sensitive to get the best out of them. She needs that relationship to be strong because they're consultants, they're very good at what they do. So it's this tension, tug of war, a bit of like making sure you realize my position and that I have real needs at the same time, not belittling them or putting them in their place. I put my air quotes up there, putting them in their place, then you don't get the best value out of them, right? So she's struggling with that right now. It hits so home to me right now because she said, they remember me back 15 years ago. They don't realize I'm the senior executive of insight to this company, but they're treating me like I'm an analyst. They're telling her exactly what to do, which is kind of funny. But old habits, they're hard to kill. They're hard to kill for sure.
Yeah.
So if there's some tips out there, I'd love to be able to, there's some people, like I said, in our audience, Chad, that just, they don't feel comfortable. And you've said, like, ask questions, but there's some tips, or like, what questions would you want to hear? What's some typical, very quick questions that somebody could get that call started, that initial contact, to start building rapport and trust? You probably don't talk about what are your needs as it relates to financial. You're probably thinking about their family maybe or something, but are there certain questions you're like, man, these are your go-tos? Like, use these questions to help build that trust and rapport.
Yeah, I love to talk more about the personal side of their lives. Like, what do you like to do in your free time? Tell me about things that you're passionate about. What do you have some hobbies? What are the things that that you love to do? And one of the most successful sales professionals that was on my team at the previous organization was so good at marrying his passions with his clients' passions.
Yeah.
Right. So it had nothing to do with a product, had nothing to do with selling something, but it had all to do with that particular client saying, geez, my passions, I love to mountain bike. Awesome. So do I. And then on Saturday, going for, an awesome mountain bike ride up Mount Tam.
No way. Oh, I love it.
And getting after it. And then maybe having a beer afterwards and breaking some bread and like understanding that. I love asking questions about basically what makes people tick, what excites them, what do they love to do in their free time, and in some cases we're talking to people that maybe started their own business.
Yeah.
That's hard to do. It's really hard to do, and they probably took a ton of risks to do it way back when at an inflection point in their life. Like, that's really interesting to me. Like, I want to tell me more. Like, I want to learn about what you went through. And that, to me, those are the kind of questions I love to ask. It has nothing to do with, finance or.
Yeah. And I think a powerful part of that, and you mentioned it early on, is authenticity.
Yeah.
Like, I know that there's books in the behavioral science space that tell you that consciously, sometimes it's hard to know if somebody's being authentic. but subconsciously, you can tell if somebody truly wants to understand, or if they're going through their 3 questions, like Steve, here are the 3 questions asked, and then I'll talk about my business, right? And it's hard because I think so many people are caught up in here's what I'm trying to sell, as opposed to building that authentic relationship. And what I would suggest, what you just said here, is the person you're talking about, for you to be able to be successful enough to get somebody to go on a mountain bike. I mean, whether that's a mountain bike on a Saturday or somebody you barely know, that has to come from a place of authenticity. It's not about like, let me take you playing golf and then I'll let you win 3 holes and then I'm going to sell you on my, like, it has to come from a place of authenticity. And people know it, guys. Like, it's not consciously known always. Sometimes it is, right? You can tell if somebody's a little bit too slick, but subconsciously, you absolutely know. Your intuition is so powerful. You can almost always, not always, but you can almost always tell if somebody's being authentic or not.
Absolutely. And look, their passions may not necessarily align with your passions, right? You may not like to mountain bike, you may not like to play pickleball, and that's okay. But
Yep.
you can still be authentic and appreciative of what their passions are, and respectful of their passions, and be genuinely interested in them. And actually, sometimes it's even more interesting because you're like, wow, I don't do that. In fact, I'm terrible at that. And I'm really intrigued. That you're awesome at it.
No, is that Franklin? Steve, does Franklin? Who's the guy? Or was it Franklin Covey, or somebody else? But basically said like the key to success. It's in that really famous book. It's to find something that you like about that person. Like, even like you just said, you may not like mountain biking, but the fact that they do, and you can honor that.
Yeah,
that will signal that there's this like and trust just by you saying that. So it doesn't mean that matter that you have to fit it, but just the fact that you truly love the idea that they love something else. I forgot what book it is, but it's How to Win. It's the guy who did How to Win Friends and Influence People. Is that
Dale Carnegie? Yes.
Carnegie. That's the one, right? That's his main thing, is find something that you like about that person. If you can't find something that you like about a person, that says something more about you. Yeah. That you can't figure out something you can like about somebody. And it's a really, really powerful trick.
I think that that's the power of niching down and getting more specific instead of general. When you're niching into let's say that you're a mountain biker, right? And somehow you join a community of mountain bikers, all of a sudden you really are sincerely authentic because you're niched into a community that you're serving. And I think that's the real power of niching. It's kind of it's a commitment. And it's, I want to sell to everybody. But when you start to, push out people that you're not going to talk to, it helps you be authentic when you're niching. Hey, Michael's got a really good question here, Will, that for Chad. And it's, how do you foresee the application of things like Chat GPT or other AI solutions to your environment for your industry and selling?
Well, I think it's pretty amazing, actually. I've been exploring on it myself, and I think it's pretty remarkable. I mean, it's hard for me to answer as far as how that's going to impact our industry, but I think the way it'll most impact our industry is it's information is just at your fingertips, and it's just everything you possibly could want to know about the market is right there, right? You can learn every single thing about every investment, every portfolio, every manager, which is awesome. So it puts us on the same level, puts us on the same playing field. So then you ask the question, okay, so then what value are the people in my industry, our industry, going to bring to the table? Well, it's going to have to be really good listeners, really good problem solvers. It has nothing to do with the market, the product. It's all about how you truly help me solve my challenges, right? And are you on the same side of the table with me? And are we in this together? I think candidly, that's how that changes our industry. It's no longer, we don't have a competitive advantage over you or anybody when it comes to having knowledge on product. We don't. You know what? A product is simply a commodity. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. It's just a widget.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'll build on that a little bit. The mutual friend that introduced us, Chad, he said one of the things that you pay me or a financial advisor to do is to kind of take your emotion out of play. So people will call him apparently and just say, whoa, I need to take money out. Their emotions, their money, right? It is their future. And what he says, what you pay me to do is for me to tell you my experience, I can tell you that this is reasonable. I know how you're feeling. Let me tell you about ways to think. And he goes, just to calm the emotions down. He goes, that's honestly a lot of what you pay me to do, is to, when there's a problem, I want to pull my money out of the market. He's like, okay, I can do that for you. But let me first give you a couple of 3 things to think about before you do it. He goes, you're paying me for those 3 things. And I was like, that's such an interesting thing, because you're right. I could probably go to some sort of computer software and trade anything I want to and take money in and out like that. And that was an interesting thing, because it comes down to Chat GPT, I believe, will never be able to do that. It'll just tell you, here's the facts, right? And sometimes those facts are going to be wrong, by the way, right now, the way it's set up. But what it will not be able to do is give you that empathy and that experience to know my client sometimes overreacts. I need to listen to this client, my client, and I need to have my 3 steps. And then if they still want to make that decision, great. But you're paying me to slow things down and give me advice that I otherwise wouldn't have. And I always loved that about him, because that was more about him understanding me as a person than it was just do exactly what I want you to do, because any technology can do that.
Very, very well said. I mean, our industry was, fearful of the robo advisor, right? Where for 25 basis points, you could get a diversified model. And guess what? You can still get that today. Yeah. But our industry went on, the advice side of the business went on to continue to grow at a very significant pace. It's gotten even larger than it was before when robos first were introduced. And it's because people want that human contact and that advice to keep them on course. And you're exactly right, Will. It's like when the markets go down, people get very emotional. And to have that steward who can take the emotion out and speak logically and say, today is not your price. Your price will be posted 15 years from now. That'll be your price. Today's not your price. So don't worry about it.
Chad, I think one of the things that I like about you that you're probably really good at with your clients is that emotion that is flying all over the place. But when they speak to you, they know that you care. They know that you understand them, and that calms them down. That's because they trust you, and that's why they're looking to you. The way I would answer Michael's question is one of the things that Chat GPT can help you maybe get clarity or get some other information to communicate, understand them better. So you may be able to do a little research more on their specific background or hobbies, or maybe even what's going on in the world. Then you can even bring that. But you're right. Bottom line, whether you have that or not, they're depending on you and the trust in you. And that's where you calm them down, is from that trust in the relationship.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot, Steve, of what we used to talk about a lot, about bringing humanity back into business. Like that will always be your point of competitive advantage. I don't care. It just, even today, 3 years later, we're still talking about the same idea. Technology is going to change. Medical things are going to change. Society is going to change. But people's desire for human connection, we could still talk about this 20 years from now. It'll still be your biggest point of your biggest point of differentiation.
Absolutely.
Guys, it's been a great conversation. Lots of input from the audience. Chad, obviously, you're pinging some folks out there. They're responding. You're good at this. Mm-hmm. What's maybe your last little golden nugget you want to leave with everyone?
Well, I guess kind of close where you start, right? It's people, as I said in the beginning, people do business with people that they like, people that they trust, and people that truly have their best interests at heart and add value to them, right? And that's, I know it's a very simple point, but it's there's a lot of truth to that. It's, as I mentioned with Nick Murray, it's people don't care what you know until that they know that you care. And you care about people, you're empathetic, you really genuinely care about what they want to achieve and accomplish. The world's your oyster. People want to know that you care. And
really
very powerful. Very powerful.
It is. Chad, thank you so much. Hey, so if you out there, if somebody has heard this podcast and they're like, I want to connect with Chad, I want to connect with IFG, what's the best way they could what's the best thing they could do to do that connection?
Yeah, you certainly could email me directly if that's the best form of communication. which is C Cristo. So first initial C and then my last name, Cristo, at IFGSD.com. We're based in San Diego, so IFG is in San Diego, so IFGSD.com. So that's really the best way. I'd be honored. I'd be more than happy to respond.
Well, Steve, I don't know. This has been a good show, buddy. What do you think?
No, I do. I enjoyed this very much. I love the commonality here, folks, and why we do this show is Will wrote a book called Marketing in Mind States, and it's behavioral science. And the essence of the book is your marketing message or your sales message cannot be a one size fits all. It has to be unique to the folks that you're working with and their state of mind in that moment. And basically what Chad's been communicating to us is a version of that. Okay. And so it all ties to here. If you don't have this book, if you haven't read this book, get the book so that you can have a better way to connect with your folks. Chad, you've been a great guest. Great stuff. I love your stories here. You'll hit your quota if you do the right thing, and you have to empower the people you want to help. And the only way you can do that is if you take a little time to understand them. So good value added to
Very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate
the
it.
Mindstate Marketing Hour. Learn more about the Mindstate Group at themindstategroup.com. By the way, Will, folks can reach out to you if they need a little help.
They sure can. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Will Leach, or just go to themindstategroup.com. I got big red boxes that Steve has put on my website to connect with me. If you want to schedule 30 minutes, I would love to talk to you about your marketing, behavioral science, or your favorite chili recipe, if you want to actually even talk about that. That's an inside joke, Chad. But we try to get chili recipes sometimes. We're not very successful, but you guys give me a call. I love behavioral science. I'd love to talk to you about your brand and your messaging and how to, create some more persuasive messaging to grow your business.
All right, and then you can connect with Chad at CCristo IFG at IFGSD.com, right?
Correct. Yes.
See there, I did it. Hey, we're going to roll out now. We're going to turn some music on. You don't have to dance, Chad. Will does. He likes to dance. It's called
I love to dance.
Of course you do. It's called Feeding the Ducks.
Feeding the Ducks.
All right, we're going to feed some ducks on our way out. Thanks, folks, for all you out there in LinkedIn and your comments. We appreciate it very much. And did you know, let me find this thing and roll this. Did you know that the Mindstate Marketing Hour is on Buzzsprout, iHeart, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, all those other places that you love to listen. And if you like to watch, like Chauncey Gardner, then it's a YouTube channel, Mindstate Channel. The Mindstate Channel, where you can see this show. Every week we publish this. We look forward to next week. Chad, thank you so much. Will, good job as usual. Good guest. I'm Steve Brown. I like to say I'm the smartest guy in marketing because I get to hang out with Will every week. And you folks listening are getting there too. We've done over 100 of these. This is an award-winning behavioral science podcast. Right, Will?
This is what it looks like, yeah.
Where's your trophy? Yeah,
it's right behind me. There's actually a microphone over there. That's the trophy. It was a microphone. Right. It's actually an engraved microphone. They did it right. Something that's practical, not just beautiful, but practical too.
It's not just words. We got something to show. It's an engraved microphone. We'll see you next week. All right, here's the awkward walk out here.